I was just saying, you have spent the last 2 months doing research about the relationship between the internet, so, fan sites and things like that, and literacy in young adults. I was wondering if you could first tell us how you discovered the Hunger Games, and then we'll sort of get into how that relates to your research.
Sure. I actually first read the Hunger Games when it first came out in 2008. And I have several friends who are librarians, and they clued me into it, and I read it, right away. I sat down and went through it in a day. I gave it to my son, who was 9 years old at the time, and I said, you have to read this. He sat down and read it in a day, and then we had to wait for, Catching Fire to come out. So I've been a fan of the Hunger Games, for the past 4 years myself, and it's a trilogy that I really fell in love with as an adult. And then I saw how the teenagers that I knew and how even the college students I knew would really get into the books as well. And so for me, that was just really exciting to see how young people were getting so excited about literature.
And was it the Hunger Games itself that inspired you to take on this research project, or was it something you were already sort of thinking about and then you just incorporated the Hunger Games into it?
Yeah, it was definitely the Hunger Games, because I worked as a high school English teacher for many years, and what I hear a lot of people say is, oh, well, teens today don't read, or, the internet, it's not safe. And I don't really believe that. And so when I saw how teenagers from around the world were so taken with the Hunger Games that they would go to Google, they type in the Hunger Games, and they'd come across these dozens and dozens of fan sites, that to me was a really powerful moment, because even research from the National Endowment for the Arts came out 9 years ago, and they said, well, there's a marked decline in how teens are reading literature, and they actually blame technology and the internet for, drawing kids away from books.
Right.
So what I'm seeing with the Hunger Games is, if anything, the internet and the fan sites that a lot of you are part of, these are actually bringing children and teens back to literature in some really powerful ways. And as someone who studies literacy and who studies technology, that's a really exciting thing.
And as part of your research, you have interviewed teenage Hunger Games fans. What have you, and I don't know how much of this you can talk about, but, what have you found in interviewing these young fans? Have you discovered that they have felt sort of a renewal or an increased passion for reading?
So my study is ongoing. So as part of my study, I've interviewed a number of teenagers, ages 13 to 17, in the United States, Australia, and Canada. And so if anyone's in those countries and is really excited and wants to talk to me about the research or wants to participate in it, you're welcome to contact me. But what I've learned through the study, again, which I started last year and it's still going on, I've gone into these fan sites as a participant myself, and also, as a researcher, and I've been able to see just the different kinds of literacy practices that are taking place. A lot of people, when you think about reading, you think about textbooks or you think about, books assigned by your teacher. But if you look at fan sites, there's so much literacy going on. You've got fans writing this Hunger Games-inspired fiction, creating art, producing videos, composing music, and designing role-playing games, and that's all literacy. And anytime someone engages with literacy, whether it's in school or out of school, it helps to make you, a better reader, a better writer, and a better designer. So the teenagers that I've worked with so far have given me a lot of insight just into what happens in fan sites. For instance, there's this really great thread on mockingjay.net that I came across where a teacher went on and said, well, I want to teach the Hunger Games. How should I teach it? And now a lot of times when we think about English class in school, we think about, vocabulary worksheets or study guides or essays. But, the teenagers on this thread said there's so much more you could do. You could write a song and perform it. You could keep a journal from a character's point of view. You can make a movie trailer. You could create a playlist. You could, do a detailed map, of the setting. And there's so much more project-based learning that I think teenagers really want to engage with in school. But since if there's not those opportunities in school settings, I think fan sites are where a lot of that's being supported right now. So just to me, someone who studies literature and literacy, there's some really powerful things happening on these fan sites both for children and teens, and also for those of us who are adults who love young adult literature.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, and I think there has been sort of an anti-internet angle in the public, especially when it relates to young people, because I don't think that a lot of people realize the value that does exist with sites like this, and I'm really excited that you are sort of bringing this to the public light because, like you said, I mean, there is so much project-based learning going on and so much literacy-related learning going on, and you know, kids are doing this stuff and they don't even know that they're doing it, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and there's been some research before, like on the site fanfiction.net, for instance, and the researchers have looked like at one particular site. But what I found really interesting about the Hunger Games is that there's so many different fan sites, and young people are not just going to one site, they're going to multiple sites. And even over the course of my study in the past year, there's been so many new fan sites, both created by Lionsgate and the industry, and also created by fans that have emerged and changed over time. And that's really exciting too. Is that this is a really dynamic fan culture that's going on. And I think that once the movie comes out, in March, we're going to see a lot more fans come in, and it'll be interesting to see what happens here when you have people who are coming in who haven't read the books but they saw the movie. And I really hope that they can go back to the literature, read that to kind of understand all the nuances, with the plot and the characters and everything.
Do you feel that this
well,
is?
I just wanted to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to ask one
completely not legitimate question.
Oh, well, I just had one quick question. I was just going to ask, do you feel that this is something that is unique to the Hunger Games because it does really lend itself, I think, to a lot of different dialogue about, politics and society, and it is a book that is being taught in schools, or have you found that this is the case for other works like Harry Potter and things like that?
I think a lot of it started with Harry Potter, because, and even if you look at a site like fanfiction.net that's been around for a while, there's a lot of different, fans flock to a lot of different things, whether it's a book or a film or a TV show. But I think the Hunger Games, to me, this is the first time I've done research in this particular area. It seems different to me in some regards because it's, first, there's just a number of people participating on fan sites, and second, you have both children and teens and also adults participating on these different sites. But there's so much variety of the fan sites, and some of them focus on specific characters, some of them are role-playing games, some of them focus more on news, but there's kind of something for everybody. And to me, that's what's really cool is, if you're interested in kind of going into a different area, like with making songs, and you've got an entire site that can support that. So I think I think the Hunger Games, it's continuing on with some other what's been started before, but it's also kind of changing the game in some ways too.